Hello, and welcome to the Trenchless Technology Podcast. I'm your host, Sharon Bueno, Managing Editor of Trenchless Technology Magazine. Today on the podcast, I'm talking with John Fluharty, Chair of the Power and Communications Contractors Association, better known as PCCA, and a longtime member of the HDD contracting community. John, over the years, had helped installed fiber build-outs during the late 1990s, so he's very familiar with our topic today, which is we're going to be getting his perspective on how the COVID pandemic is impacting the fiber to the home market in relation to the HDD market. He's also going to fill us in on a cool partnership PCCA has made to make internet connections available to those who need it the most. So welcome, John. I appreciate you taking some time and joining us on our podcast.
Thank you very much.
I hope you and your family have remained safe during the pandemic months. I know when we did the interview for the article that's in October, our October issue, you were talking about splitting time between Florida and Michigan.
I am back in Florida, and yes, and things are going well here in Southwest Florida as far as the COVID situation goes.
Oh, that's great to hear. First off, maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit to tell about your background. I know the Fluharty name is known in HDD circles. They're probably familiar with that. I know you worked with Mears, or you owned Mears, part owner of Mears, and you have a role with PCCA. So maybe just fill us in on that.
You bet. Lifelong contractor. My grandfather was a contractor, a pipeline contractor. My father was also. My uncle Herb and my cousin Scott Fluharty and myself were the owners of Mears when we sold it to Quanta Services back 20 years ago now in 2000. I've worked for Quanta until 2008. At that time, I'm an industry consultant, and I work with Mears still to this day. I was heavily involved in the big long line build-outs, long haul build-outs of the late 1990s, 2000s. I kind of hadn't been around that part of it, been more involved in electric and the pipeline side for a while, and now back kind of heavily in the broadband world as the market is picked up over the last few years and really turned into an exciting time in the industry. It is the time to be a broadband installer in the history of broadband. Right now is the time.
And what is your role with PCCA?
I'm chairman of the board. It's been an interesting year to be a chairman of the board. A lot of work that you wouldn't normally have to do. Politically, we've been heavily involved in the bills on the Hill and defining things like essential workers in our industry. Signed a lot of documents as chairman of the board on behalf of the industry. And one of the more interesting stories is one of them that I signed was just before the first relief package, and it went to Mitch McConnell. It was on a Friday afternoon, and that passed that weekend. And I don't know if this is coincidence or other people did this or what, but the wording that was in there was actually the same wording that came out in the actual document through Congress. So it's been interesting to watch it from this position and see how the association actually works, see how involved we have to be nowadays in our government, and then live with all the interesting thoughts of a pandemic and things that happened related to the pandemic for us. So strange year for me.
What is the role of PCCA in the fiber world? Can you talk about that? What kind of things do you do to help out?
So PCCA has not only the contractors, a lot of the subcontractors, the suppliers, the fiber providers all belong to it. So we say openly and fully believe this, that our contracting base, suppliers and everything represent 85% of the spend in the United States on broadband. So we're the authority on the installation and everything that goes with that. And that is how we portray ourselves, by the way, on the Hill, is the kind of the honest broker of information. We tell everybody on the Hill how it's really going to work, what's really going to happen, and why fiber and speed is important. Speed, we think, is really what's going to drive us going forward. And we've been a big proponent of that actually for 5 years. A lot of the wording we started putting out 5 years ago, you'll see in the speeches of the FCC commissioners nowadays. So we have what I think is a very important role in today's world in it. We take it very seriously, and we're one of the more active contractor associations in the DC space right now.
Now, In a pre-COVID world, we can remember when that was. Seems so long ago. But in a pre-COVID world, what was the state of the fiber to the home market in the United States? What was going on?
Sharon, it was ramping up. We've really been having great years the last couple of years in our part of the market, and we're looking forward to continue. We had no our world was just in a constant ramp up, constant build out mode. When we got together, there was no such thing as bad news at our conventions related to the broadband industry. It was just a good time to be working through that.
So here comes the fun question now. Can you compare that to what's going on now? Kind of like the game plan sort of probably changed about March of this year for everybody, what was planned for this year.
It really has taken a big change. Everybody in the government and in the private sector was all very committed to fiber. Everybody was moving ahead, like I'd said prior, but now all of a sudden, the true weaknesses of the system and the true importance of giving people a legitimate, strong broadband connection, it has really come out. And I actually have a personal story in my Florida home. I have 100 megs down, 50 megs up, fiber to the unit, and I didn't realize how well that really worked until I went back to my Michigan home, had a cable TV subscription with a blast tied to it. I was able to deal with the downloads and stuff very, very well, but my upload speed just didn't carry it. Then I actually sold that place, rented a place for a month, and went to a DSL connection, which I personally hadn't had in many, many years. So I got to experience that also, and that was I was actually better off doing a call like this today over my phone than I was over my computer. It was that slow, that much slower, and that much more difficult to deal with. So I've seen it in my own world over the last 90 days, and you really realize just how much speed is required and how important upload is. The thing
Mm,
that fiber really gives us is that upload. The conversation you and I are having over video here works really well in most systems. But if all of a sudden you had kids home that were trying to do that at school and you had a spouse at home that was trying to do this same exact thing, that's when it all crashes. And
mhm,
I've experienced that, and actually other coworkers have too, where the demands of the network in your home are overwhelmed by the lack of upload speed to keep all this stuff working. Download speed, everybody's pretty much can
mhm.
figure out a way one way or another to make that happen over their technology, but the upload speed is really the weakness right now.
From your perspective, from the PCCA perspective, what has the COVID pandemic impacted the most? I mean, everyone's working from home. Like we were talking about, there's work from home, there's remote learning, there's telemedicine that's out there, and there's also the entertainment side, which is a whole other aspect of it. And you have, like you said, you have multiple devices at home now, things going on. What do you think is impacted the most?
Well, I think if you break them down individually, I think it is the work from home and the online schooling because that's interactive.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two things that have to go up and come down. The entertainment side is a one-way street. That's coming to you. You're not uploading anything there. So that system tends to work, and let's face it, worst case, you have a little bit of buffering. Now, obviously, the entertainment industry, if you look at the subscriber rate for
Mm-hmm.
Netflix and all these kind of things, is shot through the moon, and we're all guilty of that. And we're definitely going to continue that. But from a technology and really crippling the system perspective, the real need for fiber has shown up because of this work from home and this schooling from home, where you need the quick latency, the upload speeds, and the download speeds to carry out that situation. And I think that's why you're seeing the political discussion. If you think rural America broadband would not have been part of a political platform for either candidate in a normal
Yeah.
election cycle. Now everybody talks about it. We're on every single candidate's map and their explanation of how important this is to roll out to rural America. So we have a really unique position right now
Mhm.
because people think yeah, what we do is very important here, and we need to continue this and make this work for all.
So, what is, from the PCCA standpoint, what is needed to meet the needs of what's going on?
Well, it's definitely money, but it's also getting the right technologies. The one thing we work really strong on is pushing fiber to the home. We really realized that when you go through all the choices of technology, anytime you go to air or satellite or anything, you start dealing with problems. You start having outages due to weather and things like that. And again, my experience of the last 3 months of dealing with some of the different technologies has really brought home to me how well fiber to the home works. And so we need that. The other thing is obviously for some parts, the system is really kind of interesting. In some parts, it's going to be like in the cities, you're going to see a lot of 5G and things like that because it's easier to put the antennas up. You can put them in a dense area, and it's hard to run all this cable to people's units and such, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you move out into the suburbs, the fiber to the home networks are really financially viable and feasible, and private enterprise will pick that up and make that work. And we're seeing that happen both with the cable providers, the phone providers, and individual businesses that are just getting involved in it and becoming investors in a private network. Then you get into rural America, then you have the government programs, the RUS, and things like that. And loans cover a percentage of that, and then grants are required to finish out the rest of that program. So it really depends on where you sit. You're literally set on so where your property sits is what technology will be brought out to you to accomplish this.
Are you hearing what this investment's going to cost? I mean, from a PCCA, what are you hearing in Washington? What are you hearing? What's being proposed to pay for what's needed?
Well, you look at some of these bills, and you're looking at one of them's $85 billion just for the rural America piece alone. So these are multiple billion-dollar price tags. If you look at the city stuff, you look at the Verizon capital spending programs, the AT&T capital spending programs on 5G. They're both ramping up again this year. They kind of held steady for a couple of years. Now they're actually investing more, so that number's going up. But these are in the hundreds of billions of dollars between all three areas, with the rural piece being 85 billion alone is what the numbers that are floating around right now are.
Horizontal directional drilling has been a critical component of fiber to the home, like you said, dating back to the late 1990s when the first big build outs were going on. How will all this going on further impact directional drilling?
Directional drilling is going to continue more and more to get its market share. I was actually on a project in outside of St. Louis in Missouri, and literally, the largest. It was 90+% directionally drilled in an existing community that, by the way, the pedestal was the phone pedestal, the cable TV pedestal, and then this alternate provider called Gateway that's installing this network was sitting next to them. But all directional drilling, all potholing. You go from pedestal to pedestal. It makes for a really clean installation. The neighbors love it, and obviously nowadays it's becoming more and more cost affordable. So it will continue to have a very large market share of the city, the urban, and then of course it'll be used at some level in all of the work that has to be done in rural America for your river streams, whatever else obstacles that come up.
Great time to be in directional drilling for sure.
Absolutely, small rig directional drilling is going to be a good game right now, and you can see the vendor base is really focused on that. They've made those systems a lot more operator friendly. Kids nowadays learn to play video games, so they actually adapt to our world very quickly, and, uh, and we're able to grow that business. In the '90s, that was the late '90s. We had a lot of rigs, a lot of small rigs and big rigs. Developing people to do that was a really big challenge. Now, actually, you can develop people in that area actually easier than you can say with an excavator or something like that. So
Hmm.
it's a big help. The world's heading in the right direction there.
So, how has all this ongoing fiber work affected HDD contractors? Especially, I mean, I'm guessing it's mainly the compact and the mid-size rig
Yeah,
operators.
that's definitely the place that's getting the bump right now. You're going to see a good mix of of the 2 men in a directional drill type contractors, and you're going to see a lot of self-perform out of these contractors because it's an old-fashioned kind of land grab right now. If you're the first person in there, you're going to get it and you're going to get the business, and nobody else is because nobody can afford to build over top of you. The take rate, if you come in and take 50, 60, 70% of the people, obviously there's no room for another competitor. So there is the pressure of the old-fashioned land grab that goes on, and so we're going to be pushed as a directional drilling industry to do this. I think the key for us is to really. I'm also on a board of directors for the Common Ground Alliance. I'm the excavator rep for the 811 Call Before You Dig Association. I think making sure we pothole, one call, pothole, all those things we need to do to continue to work safe and maintain a safe installation process there is critical for us. In the late 90s, that did not happen for us. We had a lot of incidents in a lot of major cities, and it created a lot of havoc in the HDD industry that lasted 5 to 10 years in some places. We need to be focused as an industry to make sure that doesn't happen to us again.
How has all this fiber work affected what manufacturers are looking to do and what they're putting out there now? What kind of technology is being impacted by what's going on?
You're seeing all kinds of products come out right now that's going to help the industry. Pre-wired service drops with the connectors on it, so you could just pull them through. Multi-duct under one sheath. These multi-path ducts are really, really a cool situation, and they work really, really well for the HDD process. So everybody, when you get in a position where you have more work than people, then one of the easier places to save money is to spend more money, say in the factory and less money in the field, so to speak. So you're going to see more and more of this pre-wiring, easier. The pedestals are getting easier and easier to wire. The duct systems for multipath and micro ducts and inch and a quarters all under the same bundle are showing up, and those are working really good. I saw some of that installed here a couple of weeks ago, and it's just really a great way for us all to build in some redundancy and at the same time have a quick and simple installation for small rig HDD. So yeah, the manufacturing world is definitely coming at it. We're starting to get some whispers of some fiber shortages for next year, and I believe that's probably true because again, you can't have a scenario that I described earlier where there's more pressure every day to put in more fiber, and they're just like everything in the world. There's only so many fiber manufacturers, so many feet a day that's built.
What do you see as maybe some of the short-term, long-term impacts on the HDD contractors?
Well, again, I think it's going to come back to this balance of demand versus safety versus long-term problems. We are going to get pushed hard to develop people, to put more feet in the ground every day, to build these systems quicker. And if we stick to the good process, PCCA's wrote what I felt, and it's been adopted by many other associations in Washington. This 3 pillars where we say everybody's got to belong to the one call system. All locates have got to be made accurately, and all contractors must pothole. That, if you look at it, gets us up into one of those 99% success ratio games, and that's where we need to be. If we don't do those kinds of steps and we don't work in a responsible method that way, then we are going to create a headache for us, and we'll see some of these no HDD bans pop up in certain municipalities and things that have had bad experiences with us. And the one thing too nowadays, the incidents are well publicized. I mean, anytime you have a problem, there's an iPhone within feet of that problem that gets posted to the local news, who in turn flips it to their big carrier, the ABC or NBC or CBS of the world or Fox, and here we go. We're on the local news, the national news, and cable news. So we have to be careful. We have to make sure that we're operating in a manner that we can keep this sustainable for us, because this is going to take a long time to build this out.
What's now the new normal going forward with working from home, remote learning, that may be just the tools in the future. So what challenges or issues does fiber to the home market face in this new COVID pandemic world?
Well, when you get a bunch of contractors together and they start complaining about their world, you're going to hear things like the inefficiencies of the one call system, not having dependable, reliable locates when you need it. You're going to hear shortage of labor. I think you're going to start to hear a little bit of shortage of fiber stories for those people who haven't planned ahead. I think that's all got to be managed and balanced both by the owners. I think this comes back to owner expectation that kind of happened to us in the late 90s in these long haul networks. Everybody wanted to be everywhere and everybody wanted to be first very, very well until it doesn't work. And then when
Yeah.
it doesn't work, it reflects very, very poorly on all of us.
I mentioned earlier when we started that PCCA's started a cool partnership with an organization. You have a partnership with the American Connection Project Broadband Coalition to bring internet services to those who don't have it. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you guys got involved in that?
Yeah, you bet. The Connect Project Broadband Group is really mainly headed up by Land O'Lakes, the cooperative, and they have done an amazing job. That literally started out with just a few people, members, and then it spread to we're over 100 different people who have signed on to this, but different associations and companies. And they really have two missions here. One is to get rural broadband through the Congress and the Senate and get all that in place because the ag world needs it. The people that live in rural America needs it. Ag is more productive with broadband. Other thing that they're doing, which I think is really fantastic because in our industry we've never really had the opportunity to do this, and it's actually going to be a big focus of our convention next week, is to discuss how we can set up Wi-Fi hotspots in communities that people that do not have access to these can pull up in their cars and use. It really affected me a lot when I was on one of my early calls with Land O'Lakes, and they said that they'd done this. They're doing it with some of the major ag providers like the Tractor Supplies of the world and people like that, and they were shocked at how many people showed up and used it. And they realized at that time it was kind of early on in the COVID thing. It was
Mm-hmm.
people applying for unemployment. It was people doing doctor's appointments. It was people, really trying to function in the world with a phone that didn't have good service, and had to get to a better connection to make all this technology work so they could function through this crisis for them. So it was really stunning to them, and when they told the story, it was really apparent to me how genuine they were in their concern and their desire for all of us to find a spot, and that's the challenge we're going to try to do right now is to get to our base and figure out how we could set them up. If we can't set them up at our workspace because it'd be too dangerous for people there, maybe you could lease a line and put it in a park in town or something where people could pull up to, or a parking lot or a church parking lot or something like that, to help those truly disadvantaged people get a shot at participating in this in their daily needs in this situation that has developed here that took us from one world to a complete online world almost overnight. That we didn't transition from somewhat online and somewhat in person we we didn't gradually shift. We've been gradually shifting through that over the years. Now all of a sudden we went from some high percentage to almost all the way.
Absolutely.
Um, so we're really at PCCA. We're really excited to be a part of this. We think it's a really great group of people who have the right concerns in mind, and in this case too, just the right mission. Let's get it deployed, but there's always going to be people who fall through the cracks. Let's take those people and let's see. Obviously we all know what an internet connection costs. That's not a big cost in our world of our businesses nowadays. Let's all figure out a way to maybe put one of those up in our town and see if we can help a few people out for a couple $100 a month or less.
It's a great program, definitely. Well, that wraps up another Trenches Technology podcast. I want to thank my guests, John Fluharty and PCCA, for joining me today. To read more about how the COVID pandemic is impacting the fiber market and HDD market, check out our October issue of Trenches Technology. You can find it in your mailbox, inbox, or online at trenchlesstechnology.com. Until next time, everyone, stay safe.